Hi, very good afternoon, and thank you all for inviting me to this wonderful keynote session, which talks about the opportunities and future of EV buses and transportation as part of this EV Digi Expo organized by the Crescent Worldwide. Thank you very much for having me here, and I welcome all the participants who have joined with a lot of enthusiasm and expectation to this particular conference. I think these conferences and such kind of brainstorming sessions are very important, especially in the context of taking the electric mobility revolution forward in India. Now, I'm sure most of you agree with me that Indian automobile industry always takes a special place in the heart of the government and also heart of the people. For example, it is the sector which takes the prominence right after the agriculture and defense. Just to look at few quick statistics, Indian automotive industry contributes to close to 7% of India's GDP at this point of time, and it is expected to grow to 12% by 2026. In fact, Indian auto industry is also home to some of the biggest automotive names, especially in terms of the numbers when we talk about, for example, Hero MotoCorp, right? The largest two-wheeler manufacturer across the world. Mahindra and Mahindra, the largest tractor manufacturer across the world. In fact, many of the major brands have recently been acquired by us in the last, I would say, 1.5 decades. What does this all mean? It all means that Indian automotive industry is unleashing its inherent potential, not only to become an automotive maker, but also a market leader across the world. Also, not to forget that we are the fourth largest market in the world, and then we are expected to grow to third largest by 2026. While these are all certain interesting aspects, the industry, while it is expected to grow to $300 billion by 2026, the automotive industry and the EV industry in itself alone is expected to reach to $200 billion by 2030. While these are all great and beautiful numbers and statistics for all of us to be proud of, but let me bring your attention to some of the statistics which really question our directions and our actions. Number one, 14 out of 15 most polluted cities that exist in the world right now are in India. 2.5 particulate matter, that is how you measure the pollution. While the World Health Organization states that 10 milligrams per cubic meter is the standard, Kanpur at this point of time has 170 milligrams per cubic meter. Not to forget about the United Nations Framework for Climate Control, the UNFCCC Paris Agreement, which we signed in the year 2015, where we made a commitment that by 2030, we will reduce our emissions intensity to the GDP by 33 to 35% to the numbers registered in 2005. And our India's import bill continues to grow year on year, while we're at around 160 billion US dollars at this point of time. If we do not act, then our oil import bill is expected to reach to 300 billion US dollars. Now, what does this all mean? Why is it that we have looked at statistics both from a positive automotive stats perspective and its implication on the environment and other things? Because let me tell you, India had been a growing nation in many of the textbooks that probably our grandparents and parents would have read. And no wonder we also read the same thing, that India was a developing nation. And if we, in the generation right now, do not act wisely, probably the textbooks that would be printed to our next generation will also have the same phrase, that India is a developing nation. While the particular statement is too complex for all of us to comprehend and to solve, But one thing is pretty clear, which stands in front of us, that the EV revolution or electric mobility revolution stands as a fair chance in front of us, an opportunity in front of us to change the course of destiny and rewrite that India is a developed nation. Let me tell you, well, I'm not really quick at jumping to conclusions, but let me tell you why I made this statement I just made right now. 30% of contribution to the transport sector, 30% of contribution to the air pollution is made by the transport sector. Not just this. In a way, I would thank COVID for one single reason, that though the world and most of the countries are not really vocal about it, but there is some kind of an inherent and inhibition and aversion towards China and its market by most of the world powers at this point of time. To a certain extent, the Japanese government started offering incentives, SOPs for those companies who intended to move out of China as far as their manufacturing base is concerned. Not just the manufacturing base, but if at all there is any market which can stand firm and compete with the volumes that of China in the world right now, it's the Indian market. So most of the organizations and most of the nations are looking at India as an alternative for a manufacturing base, also as an alternative for a strong growing market. Let me draw your attention to this point very, very clearly. If we do not act now, the oil import bill is expected to reach to $300 billion by 2030, which would almost be equivalent to the Indian automobile market cap of $300 billion. That means whatsoever money that has been produced, or wealth that has been created in the country, if we do not act now, we are going to trade this wealth for the oils that we import. Of course, India would continue to remain as a developing nation. But imagine this. If this oil import bill almost is brought down probably to 30% or 20% to whatever it is, the whole money stays back in India. The whole wealth can be channeled to infrastructure development, to our primary education, towards our healthcare, and whatnot. Now, please let me know if this is how we intend to target and to reduce our dependencies on oil imports and reduce our current account deficit, and then focus all our energy and our wealth, channelizing them into the nation, in building the nation. Won't you believe and agree with me that we have the power and authority to change the course of destination that our country is heading towards? Yes, we have the authority, the strength, the capability, and the power to give a chance for our publishers to write that India is no longer a developed nation, but a developed nation. Now, how the EV sector and the India becoming a developed nations are connected? Let me tell you, as I told you, right, that we are the fourth largest market in the world in terms of automotive. And the Indian market is also so versatile and so dynamic and very, very quick to adopt it. For example, let me talk about two case studies that happened in the past. Of course, we are not the first country to adopt the cellular technology or the mobile phone technology, but right now we are one of those largest markets in the world who have adopted it at a real fast pace. When the domestic gas supply was on the cards, people wondered how is it possible in India, because in most of the Western developed countries, the domestic gas is supplied through pipes. It requires a lot of, I would say, resources in building up the infrastructure. But then we arrived at a jugaad. We said, we are going to make these domestic gas cylinders portable and move from one house to another. Then the questions came, how is it ergonomically possible? Those are 14, 16 kilos of weight, etc., etc. But still, again, in terms of the domestic gas consumption, we are one of the largest markets in the world. And these are just two case studies among many including I would say, the LED bulbs, including the solar energy, right? India as a market, if at all we taste it once and then we understand the benefits of the initiatives that we have taken, it doesn't take much time before the adoption becomes viral and the adoption becomes at a scale which can never be anticipated and comprehended. And that's the reason I have very strong hope and belief on the electric mobility revolution that's happening in India right now. Why? Because one shot, three birds. The electric mobility revolution in India will definitely help us to curb the pollutions in line with our recent commitment by our Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi ji, where he mentioned at Glasgow conference COP26 that by 2070, India would be a net zero emission country. And that can never be possible without fully electrifying the transport sector. Number one. Number two, it also gives us an opportunity to evolve and emerge as a market leader in the EV industry, not just as a market, but also as a manufacturing R&D global hub in the EV segment. And most importantly, it helps us to reduce our oil imports. And hence, this is the reason for the first time that the highest think tank of the country, which is Niti Aayog, has taken up this Herculean task of driving the electric mobility revolution forward. In fact, Niti Aayog, the earlier planning commission, at this point of time is playing a very pivotal role, coordinating with 6 different ministries, solving the problem through multiple, I would say, problem statements, be it with the Department of Science and Technology in building the standards for EV charging infrastructure, or be it with Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, where innovative initiatives are being taken. And one of the recent ones is decoupling the glider with the battery, thus ensuring that the ownership of the vehicle becomes easier and becomes smoother for the end customer. And of course, reducing the driving license permits from 18 to 16, especially when those are EVs. And definitely one India, one EV, and no tolls. And of course, again, talking to Ministry of Finance in getting the better, I would say, customs duty for battery cells and battery packs. Then with Ministry of Housing and Urban Administration, where the building codes are being amended to accommodate the EV charging infrastructure, be it with Ministry of Power, where even more different tariffs and initiatives are being taken, especially in propelling the charging infrastructure forward. So the government and then the think tanks are doing everything that is required. They are leaving no stone unturned in ensuring that India emerges as a leader in the e-mobility segment. Now, while this is all happening, I definitely would like to focus on certain, I would say, strategies that are followed by the government and the other important stakeholders, which are kind of leading us to today's topic of future of electric vehicle buses and transportation. If you look at different policies that govern the automotive industry, while most of us only know about the recent policies, but let me tell you, the first automotive mission plan was launched in 2006. It was a roadmap for 10 years, 2006